You stand on the threshold of the final battle. Please, be fully prepared before you go further.
Okay, Mega.
Fine, Dad. Jeez. It's not like I've done this technically 11 times more, not counting future games that haven't been released yet, spin-offs that aren't exactly canon or fan efforts. God. With that, hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Megaman 11. In the last part, we finished off the last couple of Robot Masters, and now we have access to the Wily area. With that, I'm now doing a last-minute shopping spree to make sure I'm all prepped up. Sort of. I say last minute, but the Wily Castle in Mega Man 11 is notable in that it's the first since Mega Man 7, I believe. Able to return to the shop in between each level, and even to the main stage select in between each Wily Castle level. Want to go farm for bolts or get other things you are not quite able to access yet via ununlocked shop items, or things you need to beat the game to be able to obtain. With all that said and my purchases completed, let's head right into those Dr. Wily stages. I really like the design of this castle. And just as an example of what I meant, if you look on the bottom left and right, you can even see you can save here and you can access Dr. Light's lab with no problem. But something I don't show off is you can highlight the first icon where Mega Man's head is on the bottom left, and that does allow you to access the stage select again in case you want to grind for bolts. The Dr. Wily stages in this game are long. At least the two main ones, because this is a bit of an odd castle in that the first two levels are pretty on-length stages for the game and are like fully in depth, whereas the second two stages are just the final boss and boss rush, in reverse order, of course. But that said, Wily 1's main gimmick is geared platforms. There are two types of them. Blue ones with a yellow center that rotate clockwise and counterclockwise, depends on the one. And if you stand on them too long, you fall off because you're being rotated. It's standard stuff. But then there's the rusted red ones. Those ones, the moment you step on them for too long, they start to fall, so you need to make sure you're quick on your feet here. The speed gear is not essential here, but it might as well be with some of the timings here. Take your time, use special weapons when you can to take advantage of things, and their distance, especially in this stage, because the boss is most weak against the Mega Buster outside of maybe a couple instances with the Tundra Storm, so you don't need to worry about using the wrong weapon ammunition. And that's another thing. Because of the way this particular Wily Castle is structured, you regain, I don't know what hit me there, you regain every single bit of your weapon ammunition in between stages, so you don't need to worry about overusing one weapon versus the others. Now, something I've talked about the entire game is that there's items in the shop I have not been able to get, so I might as well go over all the items in the shop. Now, of course, the 1-up, E-Tank, W-Tank, M-Tank are all rather self-explanatory, but then there's some of the new stuff. First off, there's the Super Guard that's available from the start of the game, which costs, I think, 100 screws. That halves all damage taken during the stage you use that item in. However, it does wear off if you die or complete the stage. There's the Eddie and Beat calls, which do what they've done for a while. Eddie will come down and disperse a random item for you, or Beat will save you from a pit and you can fly yourself up a little bit to gain some height. If you die to spikes 5 times, you can also get an item called the Pierce Protector, which is the standard spike protection item. It protects you from death from spikes once for 50 bolts. We have the Energy Balancer as well as the Energy Balancer Neo already, and those do what I've already explained what they do before. Although I do believe the Neo only unlocks if you've bought the original one. There's the Auto Charge chip, which is available from the start of the game for 300 screws, which auto charges your Mega Buster. Not much to my preference. There's the Buster Plus chip I purchased, which the unlock requirement for that is firing 500 Mega Buster shots. That increases the Mega Buster shot size, nothing too important there. The Power Shield is something I wish I could have unlocked through this LP. You unlock it by taking over 200 points of damage throughout the game. It lessens the knockback when you get hit by an enemy, and since you take a lot of knockback in this game, that's really important. There's the Spike Boots, which essentially make you not slide on icy surfaces, which only comes into play in Tundra Man stage. The shock absorber is also available from the start of the game. That negates recoil when you fire a Mega Buster charge shot, particularly with the power gear, so that's pretty useful. Then there's the speed gear booster, which is using speed gear 50 times. That's the thing that allows me to move at normal speed while using speed gear. The energy dispenser is available from the start of the game. That's an odd one. It reduces your energy gauge, but makes the double gear technique available from the start, and I haven't even used that. That essentially, when you're below a certain point in health, the top gear in the gear meter on the top left of the screen will light up, and you can press both buttons simultaneously to kind of activate both gears at once, and your charge shot basically becomes a super charge shot that does a lot of damage. And after that, we start getting into the items that unlock through more out there methods. But I'll go into those starting next stage, because it's time for the boss of Wily 1. Not exactly weak to anything, Thunderstorm can be used during a later phase, so Mega Buster's your best bet. I see no boss fight here. Oh, not again. Boss of Wily 1 is the Yellow Devil's triumphant return. This time with a gear for a pupil. Starting off, this fight's what you're used to if you're a longtime Mega Man fan. He'll separate into sections going left and right, firing an eye beam off every time he completes. Then charge shot into his eye and take a good chunk of his health out. Around the 2/3 halfway mark of his health is where things are going to start getting weird. First off, he gains another I-beam attack that he can occasionally do, where he'll fire out several little lingering shots that try to home into you, but he can also separate into tiny mini devils that will bounce left to right across the screen, and you can damage the final one. They'll then run away all the way across back the way they came, jump back up, and then fall down in sequence. You can get some good damage against him during that, but it's also super easy to get hit if you're not using the speed gear, just due to their odd movement methods. It's arguably the easiest Yellow Devil in the series at the least, because he has not been this easy in a while. But he's definitely harder than the Green Devil in Mega Man 8 and Megaman Bass. It's nothing too bad, but still, if you're not someone who likes to use the speed gear, you could have some problems here. I'm just glad it doesn't randomly just start screaming Boomo at me, because I liked Mega Man Powered Up's characteristics for a lot of the characters, but the Yellow Devil feels like it could have gotten annoying after one game, maybe two. If anything, I hoped if they ever got to a Mega Man Powered Up 3, they would have given him like a proper, yes, Victorian, but with a little bit of Boomo still in there just for the oddity of it.
Can I interest you in some parts?
Alright, time for Wily 2. This stage is a bit more dangerous, but we'll get to why in a few moments. Now, let's talk about the more out there items. First off, there's the Awakener chip that you only unlock after beating the game. That makes it so you can venture through the stages, and every time you use a special weapon, it doesn't eat up weapon energy. There's the Bolt Catcher, which is especially odd. It's only ever available on Saturdays, and that makes it so bolts appear more frequently when playing through stages. There's the Energy Catcher, which makes energy pellets more frequent, but that only appears after you've taken 10 game overs. The Capsule Catcher only happens if you use the weapon and rush gauge all the way through 30 times, which makes weapon capsules more available, frequently appear. The cooling system, which you've seen, you use the double gear system 50 times, period. That makes that heat removal much more efficient. This is the main gimmick of the stage, by the way. There's a spike wall behind me that's essentially a slower version of the firewall from Torchman's stage. If that touches you, you're dead. There's the cooling system Infinite, which appears after you defeat the final boss, which makes it so you can use the speed and power gear infinitely without filling the gear gauge. It's essentially experimentation mode. There's the mystery chip, which, as I mentioned, makes it so that bolts appear more frequently at oddly random times depending on how fast you complete stages. It's a bit weird. There's the Buddy Call Plus, which makes it so that you can increase the amount of eddy calls and beat calls you can hold, I think from like 2 to 4, or 3 to 4. And then there's the Tank Container, which makes it so you can increase the number of energy tanks and weapons tanks you can hold. All in all, the shop has some pretty useful stuff in it, but a lot of those require a lot of going out of your way or are more likely to be found on first playthroughs just because you're going to be dying more often, honestly. With that said, I still think this is one of the best shops in the series just because of how affordable everything is and how available bolts are throughout the game. So it could be a pretty useful shop compared to some of the other ones. Now, something else I briefly mentioned throughout the game is superhero mode, which is this game's hardest difficulty, in that the boss patterns get slightly changed on that mode, so I figured I might as well go over those really quickly. For instance, Blockman on superhero mode makes more blocks above Mega Man during his first phase. He takes more damage before turning into the giant form, which now attacks much faster. And during the final phase, I think he can jump from corner to corner. Fuse Man will generate 4 balls of electricity that rotate around the arena instead of 2, and I think he fires more sparks between teleports as well. Blast Man, I think, can activate his power gear much earlier in superhero mode, as well as execute his aerial attack more than once per jump. Torchman, I think his attacks are faster and do more damage, and there's less break between them. And he can use his power gear a bit earlier. Impact Man, I think, is faster and does more damage, less cooldown between jumps, that general sort of thing. Bounce Man, I think, is just a speed and damage increase. Tundra Man, I believe, is a speed and speed gear activation increase. And I think on superhero difficulty, Acid Man fires 4 arcing shots instead of 3. Acid Barrier takes more to destroy, and he's generally faster. And I think his speed gear waves are larger, so you need to be a bit more precise with your jumps. Superhero mode, I've played at least once. It's a hard mode for a Mega Man game. If you're used to the game, it's not going to be anything too bad. Especially because you'll understand the boss patterns well enough to the point that even with those increases, you can roam around them easily. But it can be hard. Also, this room's kind of neutered by the speed gear booster, as there's no chance those particular mechs can hurt you. Now, I realize in going over all the information I have this part, I completely neglected to mention back in Wily 1 that the Yoku blocks were there, / the reappearing, disappearing blocks, or whatever the hell they're called in this game. Yeah, they're not that bad in this game because they're only in 2 rooms and their patterns are really simple. Either way, it's time for the boss of Wily 2, so get out the bounce ball, as that's what it's weak to. This is Maver. This thing's protected by its outer shell, which you can destroy by shooting it enough, but bounce ball is the weakness because it takes out in 1 shot, and then will do decent damage to the bot within. In the first phase, this robot likes to rotate around the arena in circles, firing projectiles, varying depending on whether or not the shell's open or not. But around half health, it'll use its power gear and start teleporting all over the place, firing giant laser beams at you. You can jump over them without worrying about falling back down into them like so. So if you're just good at timing, this boss is not too hard. Pile Driver also is a decent weapon to use against it, as is just the power gear charge shot, period. But the bounce ball is without a doubt the fastest. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 6, we're gonna go finish off the game. See you guys then.